Testing 1 2. Is that good, Taj?
Hello, Scott Stewart. How close are you? Okay, good. Because we're we're one commissioner away from a quorum. So, okay. Okay. No, I changed this thing.
Need me to move? You want me to move? You want me to move? No, I'm saying, I'm messing with you. How you doing today? Oh, that's great. I don't see that big, beautiful smile I usually get from you. Hold on, wait a minute. Let's restart this. There we go. All right.
Like Mr. Killian sitting next to me. I'm trying to switch that up. I need some kind of consistency. Yes. Please forgive me. We've been trying to get these voter registrations done, and we got to get 1,000, and we only got 550, and we got 2 weeks left. So, and then, yeah. So oh, they need their, yeah, they do need their full date of birth. So I'll reiterate that to the people that are doing it. But we try to get phone numbers because I know a lot of times if you can't read it, so we tell them get everybody's phone number. And we've been doing a lot of high schools too. And these po babies can't write. It's a lot. We gotta do to get some stuff together. But yeah, so because I turned in 127 to the Oakland County clerk today because it's more than just Pontiac. It was like Clarkston and some other places. That's how they do it. Well, I could have just brought them straight to you. I didn't know that. I literally did that so it wouldn't be. You know what I'm saying? But now I know, and knowing is half the battle.
Oh, test, test. Yeah. Yeah, they weren't working last night at the. No, it wasn't it was the planning.
Yeah, I missed that.
Is it if you have so many mics on, somebody can't be heard or something?
If I keep mine on.
And I
you
keep
had-
mine on, and he keep his on, and he. Doc turns his on, then the fifth person ain't got nothing coming.
Well, well, well.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Good evening. We're going to call to order the 17th session of the
18th.
Pontiac.
18.
I'm looking at my old notes, I'm sorry. All right, we're going to call to order the 18th session of the Pontiac Charter Revision Commission, October 12th, 2023 at 6:04 p.m. in the council chambers. Roll call.
Commissioner Burrows. Commissioner Garrett.
Present.
Commissioner Killian.
Present.
Commissioner Payne. Present. Commissioner Ramsey. Commissioner Stewart.
Present.
Commissioner Turpin.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Present.
Commissioner Ibarra. Vice Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I need a motion to excuse Chairwoman Ramsey, Commissioners Burrow, and Yabera.
So moved.
Support by Garrett.
All right, moved and supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Commissioner Garrett.
Yes.
Killian.
Yes.
Payne. Stewart.
Yes.
Turpin.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
Okay. Is there any amendments to the agenda? Okay, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
Moved by Garrett.
Second.
Second. Payne.
It's been moved by Garrett, second by Killian.
Yeah, he got.
Yep. All right, any discussion? Seeing none, roll call?
Commissioner Killian.
Yes.
Payne.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Turpin.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Garrett.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
Okay, all right, which brings us to approval of the minutes from August 10th. Is there a motion?
Moved by Garrett.
Support by Stewart.
All right, it's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call?
These are the minutes from September 28, 2023. Commissioner Payne.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Turpin.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Garrett.
Yes.
Killian.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
Okay, that brings us to public comments. Madam Clerk, do we have any comments? Okay, all right, which brings us to item number 7, which is amendments to the 2013 Charter Commission. We stopped off on Article 3.116. Mr. Stewart, I would ask that you would lead out in this discussion piece, starting at Article 3.116.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
were we gonna do 3103? Or are we gonna just go ahead? You said we was, the last meeting we were supposed to.
It was, yeah, it was You guys postponed it.
At 3.113, the
Yes.
transfer of properties. I thought,
3.102,
So beginning of term.
and you said for everybody to, think about it.
okay,
Write out something.
okay, do you have a thought on that, Commissioner Payne?
I did. I got something, but I don't.
Okay, anybody else, is ready to present on that piece?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Garrett?
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you for the floor. This was the term of each council members beginning at 8 a.m. on the first business day after January 1st. There was a president or chair, Madam Chair Ramsey wanted us to kind of look in to see when others have started in their terms, and I found out some of them vary, so it wasn't anything that kind of gave me a balance. I could just basically go off the experience, and I guess my conversation from last meeting still stands the same, that it should be at least 2 weeks after the election or whatever that next business day after the election has been certified. And I believe that would have taken, like if, for instance, into next year, that would be December. No, it said the election was certified it takes 2 weeks for the election to be certified. I think that was my understanding. So it was like they would take the transition or the exchange of power, if you will, would take place December the 2nd.
Okay, December the 2nd. I do thank Commissioner Payne. She wrote up a piece. I'm going to read it right now, just for discussion purposes. Beginning term of oath of office. Each officer, before entering upon his or her duties, and all employees designated by the council before entering upon the employment shall take the oath prescribed by the Constitution and shall file the same with the clerk. The newly elected officer shall make an appointment immediately following the November election with the city mayor and council to begin receiving coaching for their upcoming position. The coaching period ends on January 31st of that year. On January 3rd of the year, the newly elected officers should be sworn into office or oath by the clerk, which begins his or her official term of office for the period of years.
Should I read December 31st?
You said January, so that's.
No, that's what's, I just read it verbatim.
I understand that.
So this is from Ms. Payne. So, Commissioner Payne? Did you mean to say the 31st of December or the 31st of January?
The coaching ends on December the 31st.
Okay,
And then they begin office, January the 3rd.
okay. So, yes, so it should say December 31st. Okay. Discussion?
Just to reiterate what I said is that there's a lot of activity that takes place during that transition, and I think that was the main part of the discussion, is that what happens when a transition doesn't take place. And so there was a possible chance that there could be I don't know what the word term, I'm sorry. Basically, there can be a stall in government, and so to prevent that, that is why I recommended that you take office after the election has been certified. I don't see why in the charter we need to. There's always going to be. That's optional if somebody takes training or not. That's not something that I don't believe that we can mandate in the charter for electoral seat. But then you have to, if it is, what kind of training will they have prior to them taking the oath of office? Because once they take the oath of office, I mean, they will assume the business of the city. And so it's a little bit too late to be training at that point. I guess my point was, if a transition does not take place, you don't, there's, the business of the district still, the business of the city, excuse me, still goes on. And so, just like happened in this last transition, there was no transition. Nobody was loud about it not being a transition. So that was just an automatic assumption, but it was no transition. There was a stall in government, and there was things that were able to happen because there were no voting. I mean, it was a stall in government. And so I just think they should be able to take office after the election is certified. And then because the election is certified, previous or sitting, or if there's a council person that is no longer there, it would be up to the new sitting council person to get with the old council person to figure out the business or whatever was happening in that particular district. In a perfect world, you think it was a succession plan. You think there was some transition in time. You think people would just pass information on. I'm just being realistic. It does not happen. And so because it does not happen, I'm not optimistic that, you know, people who are running for a particular seat wouldn't know. I'm not going to even say that. You're right. I just think they need to just take their office as soon as possible so the business can continue, because there's still people who come to work during those holiday seasons, snow removal, snow emergencies, things of that nature that has taken place. And from my previous experience, assisting with this previous administration, it is vital important that a council person is there to represent the city and the business, and the mayor is able to get things done.
Stewart?
Oh, Council. Just reflecting on what's been discussed here. There's not a wholesale change of the council for each election. It'll just be one or two or whatever people, right? It's not, everybody is not running at the same time.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, this year, yeah.
Yeah, so according to this charter, everybody would be running at the same time. This is not staggered
There's
terms.
no overlapping
There's, we didn't.
terms or anything?
Yeah, we haven't, yeah,
Just go from your last election. All 7 are new.
yeah, but.
They're right.
So there, in most cities, you don't have a wholesale transition, but we just had one of those. We had 7 new council people
Is
and a new mayor.
Is that to say that for foreseeable future, we will be having wholesale changes in our governance?
So I guess to that point, Dr. Turpin, we could look at, and as a charter commission, talk about staggered terms, if that's something that you think would be a point to bring up. Right now, we're just talking about when terms start.
I do, and it reflects on my opinion in terms of what this conversation is about. Because if in fact we have staggered terms and there are people in place to see to the running of our government, I don't see a need for breaking from a calendar year sort of like format. So you have your election, and just as we do with our federal government, the election, the positions aren't taken over to the new year. There's not much going on during Christmas time anyway. But if you have people in place due to staggered terms, if something were to come up, you would have people in place to make decisions. So I'm curious to understand how we got to a point where everybody was changing wholesale like that. I don't think lends itself to good governance, because, everybody is new. Everybody, theoretically.
I agree, but neither one of the 1982 charter or the 2013 charter, neither one of them spoke to staggered terms.
Yeah,
So what you're bringing up now is a new section that we need to think about.
But then again, staggered doesn't necessarily mean all new. People run again and they put back in place. So
What I'm saying is, right now, the way our election cycle is set up, everybody is on the ballot who is going to be on city council or mayor at the same time.
Yeah.
Now, the citizens can decide to either reelect or people could
Right.
revote. But what literally just happened was we had brand-new government, and there was a lack of succinct transition, especially from the executive office, from one executive to the new executive.
Was this just coincidental that that happened?
And, I don't know if it was coincidental or by circumstance. I don't want to get into the logic of why it happened the way it happened. But what I'm saying is, if we want to do staggered terms, Dr. Turpin, and that's a proposal, then we need to look at that. Right now, we're just talking about when they take office. So I want to get everybody's thoughts. So there's two separate things that people have talked about. Garrett has a proposal for taking office December, what day was that?
It was December 2nd. It was December 2nd, which was the first Monday in December, the first business day in December. Because
Okay.
there needed to be a 2-week.
So Garrett had a proposal of the first business day in December. Payne had a proposal of January 3rd with a month of coaching, well, 2 months of coaching in between for the new officials from the previous officials. So that's what's currently being discussed. I did do some research, and there are two people that are in the state legislature right now that are running for seats, and both of those seats actually are required by their charter to take office the next council meeting following the election. That's what they have as their transition. So they have a vote on on that Tuesday, and then whenever the next council meeting is, that's when they take office. Yeah. So that is what's currently happening in other charters. I don't necessarily know which format is better. I'm just saying that those are the options that we need to think through. Stuart?
Yeah, I think I see also what Commissioner Turpin, I think, is getting to in that space. I see a benefit to both sides of that. I think there's, and I wasn't here for the previous discussion, so please, I'm listening in. I think Commissioner Garrett's proposal helps it to, I think, is one model that we can do, especially if we do not change from being all of our city council and mayor at the same time. I think if we don't change the other model on that, if we don't stagger elections, then I think we have to do something like that. And I think that makes sense. Or I think there's a provision that we could add in here, right? That may not solve anything either, but is, do we really lay out, and I think we talked about putting teeth into a lot of things in this charter, right? Is that something we need to lay out specifically? And I think we should anyway, is laying out the transition procedures for our elected offices, right? Is that something, I don't think I've seen that in anywhere, but that may be a solution as well, that it mandates it by the charter. And I think that could at least charter mandate. Now, in practice, we know that doesn't always happen, but at least it gives a recourse, I think, for anyone who is not being transitioned properly. In which case I would feel comfortable going either route, right? Whether we start January or December. I like the 2 weeks after the certified election because I think that I don't want to get into a weird space where all of a sudden the person who was elected and then they all of a sudden are not certified.
Right.
So I like a little bit of time, though I don't know how other agencies do that. But I do think that there is maybe the thing that we haven't talked about is how do we add that teeth into the transition process, which I think the most important part out of any of this, whether the times I'm open to, but I think making sure that we add that teeth as a provision somewhere is important. Because I don't remember reading anything on that.
I didn't read. I didn't have anything on that, and I'm perfectly fine with adding teeth to the transition, having a clause in there that if a transition does not take place by the 7th day after election has been certified, then it is immediate that the certified elected official takes the oath of office and begins as long as there's not a gap. But then the opposite of that could be in the language is if the transition has taken place within the 7 days, and what does that transition looks like, and that's confirmed, then the oath of office is the new board member is a part of the transition. The new candidate is part of the transition, and then also they take the oath of office January 3rd. But you had to put something in there because
Clearly it didn't.
It did not work.
Clearly it wasn't necessary.
And it did not help not to say anything, right? So it was a two-way street. It wasn't the fact that, you had one person like, oh, I'm transitioning. And you sitting here and you like, now I know what transitioning seems like. I know the word by definition, but ain't no papers moving around here. I ain't seen you and we ain't meeting. And then you get here and it's like, oh yeah, remember the transition? You be like, no. And people names transition team, and we didn't transition nothing. Right. You know what I mean? So something has to happen because the employees, there's still leadership, there's still things that have to be done during that particular time, and we don't want to see that again. I don't want to see that again.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Payne.
I just think that there should be some consistency in coming in and going out. If I were to be an elected official, I would want to have an opportunity to see where the keys are. I mean, you got to find out where everything is lying and where did you stop off with something, and so that they'll be able to pick up on that and carry on. And the person that's in office would have an opportunity to get things together to move out of the office. That's what I would just like to see. Both have an opportunity to sit down and go over where everything, because the city, those positions are carrying some pretty high and confidential works. And that should continue to go on, and it shouldn't stop because one person is no longer there. That was what I was trying to do with the piece that.
No, I appreciate that, Commissioner Payne. I agree with you 100%. I guess that works when people are all playing to the best of their behavior. The problem that we see not only in city government, but sometimes in state government or national government, when people are lame ducks, stuff happens in between when they still have that quasi power, which can be problematic. We want people to be good mentors and good stewards of the public trust to actually pass the baton and leave graciously. And sometimes you have that, but sometimes you don't. And our job as charter commissioners is to come up with a way to make sure that government runs as smoothly as possible, no matter who has the keys to the city. I do like the idea of staggered terms. I think we probably need to talk about that and revisit that. I think what I would like to do is table this particular discussion again because I hear the points and I just don't know if we still have a good date. I like the Monday after the election, but what does that actually look like? I mean, and what popped into my mind, Commissioner Garrett, was maybe we need to put in the charter a transition board to make sure that there's actually people that are not part of either administration that can kind of steer. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, we've talked about, I have fought for, and this will be one that I consistently fight for, is a public integrity officer of some sort at the city hall. That could be that person, right? I think if we think about the structure that I would like to create, which I do think that is a beneficial position, is something that person could then lead that transition board, whatever. But I agree with you. I think that having that transition board in place, I think would be really beneficial and brings people in on both ways, but I agree with you that I also think we need to think about staggered terms as a concept before we make these decisions.
Okay, so I'm going to ask that we table item 3.103 for further discussion. And Madam Clerk, can you add to that discussion of staggered terms? Because I don't know where it would fit in the charter at this point. So go ahead.
Clarity.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what, one of the things that I was gonna mention. Does that coincide with actually the election date and the 2 weeks after? Does the staggered terms really have to go hand in hand with that, or is it a whole separate identity and entity upon itself?
Yeah, like I said, I don't know.
Right,
So
that's why, and I was gonna ask that, but I'm glad you said it.
Yeah,
But
so I
wanted to say
don't
that.
know where that goes, and as we go through the charter, maybe we'll discover where that can fit in or not fit in, so we can just have a discussion to see if, because we may not want to do staggered terms, but I think if we're going to do staggered terms, then it makes the transition, especially on the council side, a whole lot easier than it would be if we do where they can have wholesale changes. So if we keep it the same way, then we know we need to have something additional in the transition plan or a sooner date. One of the two, we gotta have something. Because the way it's currently set up, it's really ambiguous. But if we go to staggered terms, then at least you would have some continuity of government, as Dr. Turpin was talking about, that may be helpful. So I just want to table that right now, and then hopefully, when the chair comes back, maybe she has some thoughts on where we can put it to. Can we jump to 3.116? Does anybody have any objections to that?
No problem.
Vote on the table.
Oh, yeah, do I have a motion to table it?
So moved.
Support.
All right, it's been moved and supported. Any discussion on tabling item number 3.103? All right, seeing none, roll call.
I'm sorry, support. Was that Garrett?
By
or
Stewart.
Killian?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Moved by Stewart, support by Garrett, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
Turpin,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Garrett,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Payne.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
So we also said we were gonna do 3.104, but I think that also has to do with the previous item that we talked about with the beginning of terms.
The organizational meeting, yes.
Look
Yeah.
at 1.04 also.
Yeah, so I would ask that we would table that also until we figure out what that looks like for terms and when that date looks like,
Yeah, organizational meeting.
organizational meeting. I need another motion.
So moved by Stewart.
Support by Garrett.
All right, any discussion on that? All right, seeing none, roll call?
Stewart,
Yes.
Turpin,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Garrett,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Now we're going to 3.116, relations with executive branch. Stewart, you want to lead that up?
Sure. You want me to do anything specific? Want to read it? Okay. I know that this is, so 3.116 is related to relations with the executive branch. So in terms of making inquiries, requesting information and records from the mayor, appointees, and employees of the executive branch, noting that council members cannot give any order or direction, either publicly or privately, to them. I think this is probably pretty standard, and it's kind of a little bit of the separations of power in that way, noting that the people that the city council oversees are usually the mayor. That kind of relationship on, kind of streamlining processes. But I do think that we've probably seen some issues with how that's operated in the past, so I'd love to open that up for comment for folks.
So last session, we talked about how this currently doesn't work. Commissioner Garrett brought up the example of a council meeting negotiating what actually happened in a district. with any kind of complaints, snow plowing, grass cutting, whatever, potholes, and how, according to the charter, that's not really the way it's supposed to happen. But this charter doesn't speak to any mechanism that would compel the mayor to address any of those council issues in any way. So I did take some time to think about what would make a better system, and I think that we should put in place some kind of communication flow chart as far as how complaints are handled, what office ultimately deals with that. So that way, there will be a clear line in order to have that happen, because we're keeping strong mayor form of government, and we're keeping the city council as is with the same power to be the legislative body. So what happens, because technically, under the branches of government, the city council is supposed to legislate, and the mayor's office is supposed to administer. So what happens when there are laws that are on the books that are not being enforced or selectively enforced by the executive? And what do we put in the charter to deal with that, and where does that come up?
Well,
Commissioner Payne.
before we actually started discussing a lot of this, Scott actually came up with a board, and I thought we had kind of like semi agreed on that. And I think it would be appropriate to have a board of such. That way, usually when a person complains, it definitely deserves and needs a resolution. But sometimes those things can be discussed and resolved without going to an attorney. And that is what I would see that board doing, being a substitute before getting to an attorney.
I think
I
that
don't know what
board
Scott's
was
idea
likely
was on
the
it.
ethics board that was already worked into the charter for this one.
Well,
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
but just,
Stewart.
Commissioner Stewart.
I put it to Garrett, but
Thank you,
I'm not
Commissioner.
sure.
So, I gotta work on the looks on my face. So, the concern I have with that is that we're talking about a conversation that we know we're not supposed to be having. And so we don't have a parliamentarian placed in the council or in this chambers. So a parliamentarian can clearly act in that right and says, this is something that is not a part of the discussion, and keep the meeting flowing, right? We have, and I say we have been accustomed to making the citizen complaint at a public forum when it's supposed to take place afterwards, and we use it as part of the grandstanding, or sometimes maybe having a lack of content of the discussion on hand, and we divert the conversation by saying, well, when the snow gonna get over in our area, and why you up there, Mr. Such and Such, can you, all of that needs to be, if we took all of those, Commissioner Payne, and at the end of the day, looked at them like one by one, like that board, that, what was the board? The ethics board, they'll be full-time. And so I was looking into something more of, like you said, like Commissioner Williams stated, a flow chart that the mayor shall, at every meeting, this is what's happening in the top 5 areas or departments that we know that this city or that this council, they want to know about. We want to know about garbage pickup. We want to know about safety. We want to know about when our grass is getting cut. We want to know about lots. Like, there's about 10 things that we know that we could just spell out just in ourselves to say that these, just to give a template of say that you will be given time to explain each one of these 10 things in 6 different districts. You also have an at-large member who either can do that, have that as part of their report, because you're an at-large member, you don't have a district. So you can also spell it out to your colleagues, which would keep it out over there. And I think we said president would be full-time. You also have a full-time president now that also can waive. So when you get to the meeting, it'll be easier for the president to say, Councilman 3, we've had this discussion. Who's next to speak on this topic? And it keeps the flow of the meeting going. But if you don't have any of those things in place, then that's I kind of like to,
Yeah.
that's kind of my topic to that.
Yeah, so, Kelly, and then I'll go.
I also underlined, and I just did it in this draft, of that section where the second part of the paragraph reads, however, neither the council nor any member of therefore shall give any order or direction, neither publicly or privately. Is that something we really want to look at changing? Because a flow chart doesn't mean that I'm going to do it anyway. And I get what you're saying by having, say, hey, these channels should be addressed and should be looked at. This is one of the problems with the current situation today, is that people are saying these things. They're going across the podium, but again, nothing is being done, either on the legislative or the administration side. So where I think we need to give teeth to is, if it takes a board or takes a language of saying if these things are addressed and found to be necessarily needed to a point to where it's injury, safety, that this has to be addressed. And I think we need language to say that more than getting into a board. Not saying we don't need a board or anything, but I just think we need the language and the teeth, again, as you're saying, to say, hey, if we find that this is a credible, problem, then you need to take care of it. Thank you.
I hear, sorry. I hear what you're saying, but the qualifying thing there is if we decide. I'm not exactly sure, who's adjudicating these complaints that come forward due to whatever happens in our community. It's, you have elected officials that you entrust the running of your city to, whether it's council people or your mayor and people that he's hired. And so you would hope that there was channels by which, if you had a complaint, you file your complaint to the city through the proper channels, and outcomes are or are not met. So in the world of politics, if it's something that's egregious enough, it will become a campaign issue of sorts. So now we have elections every so often to remove people who are incompetent in handling the needs of the community. So I'm not exactly sure why we're trying to micromanage the issues that people may bring to the front. Hopefully, the adults that we elect to run our city will handle things that need to be handled. And so I'm a little bit confused on why we're trying to micromanage issues that people bring before their public leaders.
I got that. Let me kind of jump on a different point. I think that in Article 3.116, we probably need to go to when we get to the duties of the mayor and talk about what report outs and that looks like, and that may clarify some of that. But when Commissioner Garrett was talking, I think we do, let me say it this way. I would recommend that we add a parliamentarian to this charter.
I concur. I think whether that's a parliamentarian, part of the things that I wanted to do, and again, wasn't here at the last meeting, is that I do think that we need to build up the city council department, and I think spell that out a little bit more than probably it was. I think that the language that was added was fine to that section, but I think that as part of that, right, I think that there are challenges with not having a full city department, and if we want to spell out at least a couple positions, whether that's parliamentarian and maybe, I think we talked before about a budget individual, whatever that looks like. I think if we don't spell that out, I can see that never being allocated, never being prioritized, and so, I do think that there is some benefit to saying as part of our charter, we recognize the need to have certain positions, and you could open it up in case times change, right? Like maybe a parliamentarian is not like, maybe, change it in whatever language it needs to be, or similar role, right? But I think that we need to spell some of that out for sure.
Yeah, but I'm just saying for the flow of the meeting, because I
Yes.
think that's part of the issue, and I think that having a parliamentarian would be helpful. Like we have somebody now who knows Robert's Rules of Order, and they can conduct a pretty. But there's no guarantee that the next council or whatever will be able to do that, and having somebody there, and so I think that just would be helpful, so I want to make that as a recommendation. So is there any changes to the 3.116 language as it stands? Because I think it can be addressed in other places. But we also need to make sure that if we're going to keep the strong mayor form of government, we don't take out their ability to manage their employees. Because if the council can manage their employees, then
I agree.
that makes having the mayor a moot point.
Maybe there's just one, and I think you're exactly what you said, is that I think we can, I do not see subsequent relations with the legislative office or legislative branch as part of the mayor's piece right now in any of the charters. And so I do think that's a beneficial thing that we could say, as a subsequent to 3.116, it is an expectation that you adequately respond to council concerns, whatever it is, something like that, when requests are made. Now, I think that at least gives some teeth again
So
to that.
can you make a motion for that, Scott, and then give it, go ahead.
Could I request a motion to table this till we do further research before I want to vote yea and nay on keeping this the same? Because I think it's some excellent points that's been made. But however.
Okay, you want to make a motion? You want to make a motion
I'm
to
saying,
table?
yes.
Okay. Is there a second to his motion to table?
Yeah, a second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I don't think I need discussion on tabling, but I'm gonna ask for it anyway. Any discussion on tabling?
To bring up Commissioner Stewart's point, was it something to add to 3.116?
I think that's a different.
That's a different thing.
Yep.
Okay. No, that was it for clarity.
Okay, so it's a motion on the floor to table item 3.116. Roll call.
Commissioner Turpin,
No.
Williams,
Yes.
Garrett,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Payne. Stewart.
Yes.
4 yeas, no nays. I mean, 2 nays, I'm sorry.
I was like,
All right. Okay, so motion has been tabled. Now we're at 3.117, investigative powers. Any changes there that people see?
I think this is something that we've talked about pretty extensively, the lack of teeth around investigative powers within the council. I'm not sure why I didn't capture this in my notes. But I do think that there's probably, I'm curious on maybe other language. I don't have any readily available, but I would love to this might be one where it would be worthwhile to really understand what other charters do in terms of investigative powers of their council, because I do think that is where it's been ignored until it gets to the courts a lot. And I do think there needs to be a lot more teeth there to be able to get the stuff that we need to ensure that we're effectively running our government. I think about the reports that were required from the mayor in previous administrations that, in many times were delayed.
Never happened.
And so I think we need to explore that a little bit. I don't know if you have suggestions, Kermit, I think on your end from working in it, but.
I do have questions. I do have considerations. I'm not ready to change it at this particular point, but I think that just from sitting on council, there was real hesitation about subpoenaing people, right? Because if you just want a simple email or response on what's happening, you don't want to subpoena somebody to come to a council meeting or whatever. And this particular section didn't give any variation in between. It says the council may subpoena people, administer oaths, and take testimonies, right? So, go ahead.
Sorry. I think this is where it's things like this for me that I think bring in why I may be so passionate about a public integrity officer of some sort, right? These are the types of things that you could say like, hey, council's going to keep working. Can we do a quick, could you look into this as a public integrity officer? I think that's what we need, right? Because there are a lot of things that don't happen. And that person really should have the power to be able to say, whether that's the council that maybe a citizen comes and says, my council person is doing some unethical stuff. Well, they should be able to look into that. They could also subsequently say, hey, the council may have some concerns around what's happening in the administration, and that person should have that power. And that allows the council to work separately and the mayor to work separately in that way without muddying the waters. And so I do think that's probably why for me. And I think that is where I know Commissioner Payne mentioned the ethics board. I think that's where that lays it out with the ethics board too, that there is some pieces there that come into play exactly for reasons like investigative powers. That then it takes the pressure off the council, which is that council or whatever. It gives a area, or I don't say putting all citizen complaints towards this, but ethical or conflict of interest type things that could be in that direction as well, that they currently have nowhere to send. Because who do you talk about conflict of interest complaints with, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. There's one example where, and I'll try to leave the names out to protect the guilty and the innocent. There was
Good,
a
'cause
person.
they alleged.
No, this happened. So it was well documented. But no, this wasn't allegedly. This was well documented. We had a person who was in a position of power actually talk to and throw papers at one of the people that was under the council's jurisdiction. And there was nobody to investigate the person in authority that was harassing an actual employee at that time. And so there were several meetings had, but there was no actual ramifications because the charter doesn't give any power to the council over anybody in the executive branch, because they say if you can't order employees, you definitely can't order that person to do anything, right? And so the only other recourse would have been to go to the judicial system, which would have been a bigger mess when the employee still had to deal with that office on an ongoing basis, which could have been problematic. So I think that having either a board or a person that could investigate would be helpful. I think that we need to probably add in the investigative powers, being able to refer it to the appropriate board or commission and add that language to it. And then as we flush that out, maybe we can come back to the section and put the names in or whatever we're calling it. Dr. Turpin?
Yes. There seems to be a sense of trying to micromanage all the situations that come before us in our governance of the city. But within this 3.117 investigative powers, it basically says that the council can subpoena witnesses as it sees fit of any matter pending before it. So it's something that the council is working on or has consideration of. And it could bring in people to talk about it. And if they don't come willingly, they could subpoena them, right? I don't know why we're trying to like micromanage the issues that could come before our community. And when, right here it says the council may subpoena witnesses. Something comes up, and if they feel that it's necessary to find more information regarding that, they could bring in the people that they feel could bring them the information they need. So why are we talking about creating more and more layers of like governance to do something when you've elected a council to handle these kinds of things for you?
I just want to point out, Dr. Turpin, and I appreciate your point. I was on the city council 12 years. Nobody got subpoenaed. I've been part of citizen district councils and stuff for 24 years, and I can't remember anybody getting subpoenaed. So what I'm saying is the clause may be there and be able to be used, but because there's no step in between a subpoena and compelling somebody to come, therein lies a problem.
I'm not following that.
Go ahead.
I'll also just make a note around what is best practice in a lot of other areas, right? You think about our federal government, every single agency has an inspector general. A recourse there, because human nature is human nature, right? That's how I feel, right? Pontiac is a small community.
Explain to me what an inspector general is.
An inspector general is someone who has the ability to research, investigate issues that come before them. And that is exactly what a public integrity officer would do. There is no recourse right now except for the courts or the police for something to happen, right? As something, and we have seen time and time again where in this city, we have not been able to investigate things that have been going on until a administration is done, until city council is done, until someone is out of office.
So this special investigator is a part of the fabric of our community. This person can go around and investigate things that he feels he wants or she feels need to be investigated. There's no leadership or guidance in terms of what the investigator investigates.
We already have it.
Huh?
We already have it in the community. We already have such a person. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
okay.
Go ahead, you got the floor. Yeah.
I'm
So
sorry.
how does that fit within this conversation? You know, the council is sitting there, there's some matters that come before it, and they feel they need to be investigated. So they reach out to bring in the necessary information to find out. But you're saying we need a separate entity to pay for salary, benefit package, and all that, for them to go out and do this investigation for us, the elected body that finds something in need of investigation. And you're saying we already have this in place?
Yes.
And how does it look compared to what the conversation is?
So when, we'll just take currently, my position as a community liaison person. You can call it integrity officer, you can throw whatever name you on it. You're the liaison person between the council, the executive branch, and also the sheriff department. And so you are there to make sure that everything is being above board. If there's some things that need to happen as far as council is concerned or executive branch, either or, and it has an investigative teeth to it, you need someone with an oath of office that can carry that out. What Commissioner Williams is saying, that even though this is here, there's that particular position is not in the charter. So there is no teeth. Like if there was not a person, let's just to say to investigate these particular things, and the council, as you stated, the council can subpoena a person. Let's just say they Gilgare, I just use myself as the example, and they subpoena me to come before council. I'm like, I ain't going down there. There's nothing to say. There's no one, or there's nothing. There's not a step that council can say, okay, we've subpoenaed them, they're rejecting it, someone needs to take it to a step further.
Okay, so wouldn't the council have the ability to say, well, we will appoint someone or assign someone the duty of investigating this?
That's what we're trying to put in place, Dr.
That's
Turpin.
what they're trying to
Why
put
do
in
we
place.
have to put it in place? Can't the council at the time do that?
Yes, okay, here's what the,
This, I don't understand. You're trying to micromanage.
It's not
what goes
micromanaging, it's
on
giving us
when the
space.
council are elected adults capable of making decisions and making appointments
So,
as they
hold on,
wish.
Dr. Turpin, let me take it a step back. So
You can't,
if
you
hold
can't,
on-
you can't legislate everything into this document.
Hold on, Dr. Turpin.
You gotta
Let me-
give the
let me-
people
let me-
freedom to
let-
do what they feel is
let me-
necessary at the
let-
time.
Let me ask you a question, just based on what currently reads in this charter.
Mm-hmm.
Who's issuing this subpoena, Dr. Turpin? Is the council president responsible for going to a house, putting it on the door, or compelling them to come? How does that work?
You can't
No,
micromanage
no,
everything.
I'm
saying.
I'm asking you.
Obviously, they have to use a law enforcement officer.
What I'm saying to you is, none of that's been spelled out, and so in
You can't
1982.
spell out everything.
Listen, they didn't spell it out at all, so it didn't have any mechanism in order for it to happen.
The mechanism will find its way based on what the council decides it wants to do.
It will not find its way based on what
What
the
has
council,
happened.
what the council wants to do.
That's the problem with your council.
So
no, it's a
that's why
problem with
we're
the
here.
setup of the structure. No,
That's
that is
exactly
the
why
problem.
we're here.
It is a setup. Most things in the world are because we don't set them up properly.
Correct.
The city council can only work in the best way that it can based on how we set it up. The mayor's office, the city, all of this is set up by structures. This is why we're here changing the charter, right? We're here to make sure that we are doing what's best for the government, what's best for the citizens, what an inspector general would do, and what they do in many other cities, including Detroit, including in federal agency departments, is investigate fraud, waste, and abuse. I don't think it should be an argument that we have someone dedicated to investigating fraud, waste, and abuse, and having a route and avenue for anyone in the city, and including our different branches, to identify, to have someone who can investigate that fraud, waste, and abuse. That is something that has been missing for a long time. There has been no recourse, even through the courts, the police, whatever, that nothing has happened in that way. And it has wasted taxpayer dollars, more taxpayer dollars on a salary and damn benefits to get there, right? And so that is what an inspector general is. I would suggest, if you do not know what it is, go and research it. Go and see what the Department of Defense as an inspector general and got kajillions of dollars outlined saying that the Department of Defense is not spending money right on the federal level, right? In the city of Detroit, it's what happened when Mayor Duggan had a whole bunch of issues with putting contracts in certain places, and they sent that and had that investigated by the inspector general. That is of that city. It is an independent department that allows you to investigate and make sure that if you have concerns about conflict of interest, fraud, waste, and abuse, that can be investigated. That is something that we should strive for. That is my public background that says we do not have the recourse and the ability, and we have dealt with in intimate ways the fraud, waste, and abuse that has happened in this city across multiple mayoral administrations with no recourse. And even if this is in here, it does not mean that it's being used, and that is the problem. And so I'm not trying to legislate every small thing that happens, but I do think there are structural things that we have to put in this charter to make sure that we are doing what's right for our citizens. And quite frankly, that is one of them.
I appreciate your passion there and an effort to have a morally sound government. And I would hope that our elected officials would ascribe to the same thought, feeling. I'm not convinced that we need to have a full-time person whose specific job is to look for and uncover the ill-meaning behavior of public and business officials. When something becomes obvious that the council has to inquire into it, they should be in our charter allow the ability to find someone to do further investigation. But to suggest that we need to have a full-time person looking under all the nooks and crannies and uncovering rocks and looking for bad behavior, I think that's excessive. You know, it's, you know, and so how do you create a document that looks at the passion you have for a moral and just governance, and still meet the needs of our community in terms of costs? You start adding on all these layers of like governance. You got to pay people to do that, to be standing there in the gap.
So Dr. Turpin, what I would see a public integrity officer doing would be added to what the current charter has, which is contract compliance. So you would have that person be able to look at not only, because I think you're looking at it as paying somebody just to look at ethical issues. Mm-hmm. You can give somebody more than one job duty or responsibility. The problem right now is we have nobody in oversight. So there is no additional thing. And so if you pay a lawyer to do this investigation, you're going to spend much more time and money to do whatever versus having a problem of having a person that does a regular job. And then when an issue arises, being able to look at that and have the teeth of the charter behind them in order to make decisions to bring about good governments. Think about it. We spent a ton of money on a 248-page document that was done that took 3 or 4 months of the current administration's time just to uncover things that I told people about 5 years ago, right? But we had no teeth, no mechanism, no way to do anything, and so we wasted thousands of taxpayer dollars on things that we didn't determine.
I'm not really familiar with this information that you're talking about, but I think that's probably a great example of how we create a document that would protect us from having that kind of outcome.
That's the goal. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so every department or every large organization, even small organizations, have a person that looks into these type of issues. They define them by different names, but they all go back to their local law enforcement agency because that's where it starts from, in their local courts, because you can't move unless it's proven there first. And so whether someone sends me a summary or executive summary of what they think happens as a law enforcement officer, and then I begin to investigate it, and my physical office is sitting in the police department, is no different than my office sitting in city councils or this building somewhere, and somebody handing me that same document. Either an attorney is going to hand it to me, or somebody from the legislative side or the executive side is going to start the investigation. If they give it to an attorney, the attorney is going to charge them $200 because I'm going to charge the attorney $150, or my department will. Everybody's going to get a break of that first initial cut. So you're saving, when you have a compliance officer who is sworn by oath, because the checks and balance comes, they have to swear to any information that they're giving out. And I agree with you wholeheartedly, Dr. Turpin, that I do believe that council should have this ability. But however, we've had a history where they've been on the defense side. And so it is that person who comes in, and they're not just looking at, let's just say, something that somebody does wrong in the sense of, oh, I think somebody's taking money over here, X, Y, and Z. They also are looking into the safety issues of, is this fire escape safe? So they'll go to the fire department, and they'll say, hey, when the last time you did an inspection here? They'll get that inspection done, because no one internally on the day-to-day operation side can go inspect every fire escape or complaint that comes in. So that's another issue of a complaint. The second one would be if having, let's just say, the marijuana dispensary piece, and somebody says somebody is illegally opening a dispensary. Okay, well, that's not necessarily in my district. So basically, the compliance officer will go to the local department or in our hands, the sheriff department. We have the capabilities of having people sit and watch and go and give a report and say, okay, yes, this is happening in such and such district. Okay, what are what are the laws that, or executive side, what is the statute, get with the city attorney and be able to begin to shut that down. So they're not just, you do save a lot of money. So it wasn't, and I would just honestly say, like, for me to be able to, again, watch this over numerous of years and figure out this is what we needed, that was one of the pieces that I felt, and I was able to convince all parties involved that was needed. Now, is that something that I still do to this day? Yes. You can call me a community police officer if you want to, and it's community police. You can call the title whatever you want to call it. But if somebody comes to me and they say, okay, I got this problem in my particular district, and I think my council person may be involved or in things of that nature, then I have the autonomy to go and say, okay, yeah, we cool, Councilman Garrett and all, and that's fine. And we can do this interview at Charlene's, or we could do this interview at 110 East Pike, but I need to talk to you about a situation. And you know what I'm saying? So that is what that is, to kind of help mitigate that if it does come out or something is happening, nobody's surprised and nobody can't say they don't have the information. Again, forensic audit, things are being done, helping the finance team with documentation that they can't physically go and get because they're here chroming through emails and things of that nature. So you kind of put the title, whatever you want to call it, but you have to have an integrity person because of with a budget this size and with the newness and people not really properly preparing themselves for the positions that we're in. It is very difficult and very easily in a very, let's just say, slippery slope for somebody to go down if they want to not be held accountable for certain things. That's all. Well, that's. I mean, you wouldn't. I mean, I understand, but that's fine.
Let's give Dr. Turpin the floor, and then we'll go to Stewart, Killian, and then we'll move on to the next.
So, Mr. Garrett just delineated a list of things that an individual has the capacity to do in support of the city's needs, and this item here, 3.117. Is entitled Investigative Powers. So within that definition, it would seem that the council would be, as well as the mayor, I suppose, the oversight for a person of that type of position that has the flexibility of moving throughout various aspects of our governance. To find issues of concern, and I'm trying not to create a whole new sort of like edifice that's standing there in the gap, protecting us from the powers of ill will. In our world, it's not. I do have a little more optimistic viewpoint of mankind, but I do recognize the fact that there are some issues out there that need to have structure in place that allows us to be flexible enough to move throughout and to maintain a certain amount of decorum in our everyday governance. And that's about all I got to say.
I appreciate your optimism on mankind.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I maybe have a little bit more cynical view, and that is,
you got to get up in the morning and feel good.
Which I feel you. I think what I saw and why I'm so passionate about it, and I appreciate you recognizing that, is we saw countless times. I think that off a base, this charter was built with all of mankind acting super well. Oh, gosh, we're all good friends. We're all going to operate like besties, right? And we found so many times, and this is not just, I say the last administration because it's most active, but we found a lot of times in the past 40 years of this charter where mankind does not operate in that way. And so I think that we have to always keep an eye towards how we put teeth and meaningful provisions in here that assume that there are going to be bad actors. Because unfortunately, we know politics. Unfortunately, it is the life that these politicians are going to do whatever the heck they want to, and they'll find whatever provision to do so. That's one. The second part is, and this is just an example that I was hoping that Kermit would go through, but he didn't. But there were countless times in the last administration where they did try to do a forensic audit, where they did try to do their counsel duty for investigative powers. And even when they got a lawyer or a parliamentarian or whatever it was, that person wasn't paid. That person wasn't paid, right? And so they tried to do their due diligence. They tried to do their job. They tried to get outside counsel. They tried to do whatever it was that they could within their power. And I'm not saying that the only solution, I think there's more solutions to that, but they try to do their investigative powers. They try to do their due diligence, and it got shut down. That person didn't get paid. And then look at how terrible that is for the city, right? That this person, so they did their due diligence. I'm not saying that council hasn't done it in the past, but I just think that that's exactly the challenge right there, right? Is that you can get an outside person, but if the administration's not going to pay it, and of course you can put a provision in there, that doesn't mean practice is any different, but but I think that's the thing, right? Is that like, okay, so now we got to get a lawyer. Well, that's going to be $500,000 at the end of the day, and that that continues to add up. And again, I think where I saw it and what concerns me the most is that there were so many bills that went unpaid, even to the strongness and
To the parliamentarian.
to the parliamentarian. Like the parliamentarian, what they're coming to these meetings trying to run them, and she was unpaid. Poor thing. Can you imagine 2 years? And so there's things like that that I just think we have to. That's why I'm so right. Is that unfortunately I wish that I used to be super optimistic. I still am, but I think in terms of what we have to do for this charter, is that we have to come with it as an eye of people are they're gonna be bad actors, and how do we stop them? Versus coming at it as a very I think as a nice charter that where we expect people are operating in really nice ways. That is a great paragraph that allows us to do what we need to do. But unfortunately, on the other side, if you're looking at it on the more cynical view, I don't think it gives us everything that we need. So that's all. That's where I'm coming from. I've seen it, and that's why I'm concerned about it. And so that's what I'm just. And I think we've also seen in Southeast Michigan where, there's like 13 mayors right now popping up in investigations by the OIG, the FBI. So can we stop that, right? Can we stop that? How do we give ourselves the ability to stop that before it gets to because it should go to the FBI, but are there ways that we can stop
Having
that?
these conversations is a good way to.
Yeah, exactly, yes. And thank you for, again, accepting my passion. It's one area that I am probably going to fight for the most in this charter, and so I appreciate you, Dr. Trippin.
All right, thank you. Killian?
Truth and transparency. It should be the initial, this is one of the reasons why I ran for this position.
Yeah.
Because I've seen a lot of the things that I guess, and we have two separate visions of what we looked at and what we've seen. And I've seen this city and people within this city abuse their powers, abuse their positions, mislead. Yeah, in a perfect world, this is supposed to be. Do we live in that? Go back to truth and transparency. No, we don't. This charter is supposed to give protection to those today and tomorrow, besides yesterday. And once the city evolves, the charter should evolve with the city and the problems and the future that it has. And we need some of these languages in this charter to address those problems that we'd had. Micromanaged may it be. Some things need to be micromanaged. We have too many lawsuits against this city right now that I'm like you, Scott, I'm so passionate that we have gave away half our city since I've least returned home because we didn't have no teeth in our charter to stop this abuse. Yeah. So to micromanage, let me stand up and say, I would love to do it. And I think we need someone else to stand up and say it needs to be done. So part of that, with that said, and I respect wholeheartedly what you're saying because, yeah, man is to honor man because then he honors his God. But however, when he's not honoring God himself and he's doing wrong, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to stand up and honor him and say, you're not doing right. Who is that person in this charter? Where is that position at? There's none. So therefore, I think it is needed. We need a stopgap. We need to start saying, hey, that department over there is not doing right. Let me have somebody that, like you say, issue to that subpoena. Get those things done. So I believe there is a way we can do it. Do I have the exact way to get it done? No. But do I think it needs to be done? Yes, I do. And I want to, be totally truthful and transparent with all of y'all about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Payne, anything on this topic? Is she back? Okay. I think she's in her other meeting. So, but I'll just say this. I think that integrity officer is needed for the most extreme cases, but just as a common sense thing, we've had at least 10 or more HR people over the last 6 years. And so no matter what corporation you work in, you don't have that kind of turnover in HR, no matter what's happening. And so it speaks to the fact that there needs to be somebody that can't be affected by the politics of the city. The way this charter is created, everybody answers to one of the political entities. And that is very problematic if we're going to go forward, Dr. Turpin, because we've seen it on the extreme case. But hopefully by creating this position, they won't be that busy. I would love to say we don't have any investigations at the end of the year. Like we've created a position and everybody's working with their better angels. That would be phenomenal. I don't think we're there yet, but I think that if you create a position where there is oversight, it's just like street lights stop a lot of crime. When you can push light on the situation, it makes a lot of things better. And right now, we need to add some light to this charter that wasn't there before.
It's funny how your words can create this entity that would suggest that this person would stand there like our Savior and guide us through all the difficulties we have in life and be a beacon to which we can count on to lead us forward. I mean, who's gonna watch this guy or gal?
I just want to say this because
at what level do we?
I appreciate that, Dr. Turpin. What I'm saying to you is, right now, there's nobody in the city that can't be fired for doing their job. If they actually did what they were supposed to do, and Commissioner Garrett is here, and when he was doing his job that he was elected to do, he got threatened. So what I'm saying to you is, there is no mechanism right now, Dr. Turpin, for somebody that's in the city that is getting a paycheck from the city of Pontiac not to be fired by somebody that is political. What I'm saying is the citizens actually have no other recourse than to go to an elected official in order to do this stuff where the elected officials have zero power. So literally, if I read this section, and then I'll move on because I think we got a whole lot of charter to get to. But let me say, let me just finish this because I'm very, I live this. Hold on, let me finish, Dr.
This
Turpin.
is not an elected person, then.
Let's hear me out, Dr. Turpin. Right now, according to this section that's in the charter, the city council could literally subpoena the mayor, ask him all kinds of questions or her all kinds of questions, right? the mayor could refuse to make those statements or not show up to the subpoena, right? And there is no mechanism other than going to the 50th District Court or going out, well, usually it's out to the county court in order to get something rectified. And because they're both elected officials and judges are elected, most judges will not even take that case. And so they will just sit here and there'll be several newspaper articles written about the dysfunction of the city of Pontiac, and nothing would be resolved in any shape, form, or fashion because nothing in the charter clarifies what happens when somebody acts inappropriately based on anything that's in the charter, other than removal from office by recall. That's the only recourse that citizens had in 1982 as they were creating this charter. If you didn't recall somebody and they actually got voted out, there was no entity in order to deal with that. There's nothing that even speaks to if there's somebody from the administrative office as an employee assaulting an employee from the legislative office and what happens to them. And so the mayor could literally say, I don't want to fire that person because they're on my staff, even though they're harassing somebody that works for the legislative branch. There's nothing in the charter that speaks to that. And I'm not saying that they didn't do the best that they could do. But now in 2023, I believe we can do a little bit better.
I can go on and on with this conversation.
No, we
No,
really
I just,
could.
but
We really
I want to
could,
answer. I just think
I'm trying to move on to the next thing.
no, but I wanted to answer some of his questions. I mean, because he had some
Yeah.
valid
No,
questions.
good
So
questions.
and I need to put it in a now state 2023. So I've actually tried to be this person over 3 administrations. And each time it gets to a point in the second, it was like, well, no, this is the third because it was Willie Garrett. So each time when something was to happen in that particular person's, it hits their doorstep, it's, okay, we done with this. You got to get out the city, right? I mean, they want me out the city. This particular time, with this current administration, we were able to draft up a letter that went to both a legislative and executive. They had to sign off on it and pass it as a vote. Executive had to sign off. So my physical office was here on the executive side. However, because they didn't have offices ready on this particular side, you know, it would have been common to have one over here. But you still had the ability, no one had the ability at that particular point in time to remove the situation. Like, no, it's still in effect to this day. It's just my physical office is just not in this building. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like, again, I don't stand as a beacon of, you know, whatever, anything. It's just that when there's assistance that's needed on either side, no side legally can say, oh, we didn't have that person in place. So that's how you would do it. So that's what my question is, like, I know we wouldn't put those steps or processes in the investigative power side,
right,
but there is some points inside the charter, or if we do happen to have that as a position, mm-hmm, I would like us to processes and carve out exactly what those duties look like, because they're already written out. They've already who you answer to, and who that person answers to is either the council president could be the speak arm or individual council, but the reports evenly are given to each side if a report is generated. There's nothing one person has that the other person doesn't. The control that the person does have, that if it gets to a point where it's legally something that needs a warrant attached to it, that's easier for that person to go to the judge, because he's not an elected person. Now, ideally, I'm an elected official and I happen to be the police. That does
right.
That does not work. And I didn't get into, you know what I'm saying, my whole getting into elected official piece was what? Investigating a crooked principal. And so I don't have a fear not being elected because I'm not liked, because I expect not to be like if you locking up people for stealing. So that's just how it happens. But my bosses, my oath of office, my certification, all that weighs in the balance if somebody comes behind me and says, oh, what you wrote on that public document, that police report, is not accurate. And that's when attorneys get involved, and that's when that person is held accountable. Like, I can always be called back up to what I put in a report, right? Like the council could, if you had a report, they could go, oh, no, that's not right. Oh, that's not right. That's not right. But no one can fire me.
Yeah.
No one can intimidate me and say, like the previous administration, we want him out the city, want him out the city, want him out the city. Because when I was working for the police department, who was ran by the city, is the only way that would work. If that makes sense. And that's just saying, there's ways to do it. And like I said, you could call it whatever you want to call it, but it's definitely needed. And it's not just to be the gatekeeper, because that don't work either.
Yep. I think again, I think you took on that role in a meaningful way, but obviously that wasn't spelled in the charter. So let's spell that out, right? I think that's
what
exactly
I'm saying.
what it
That's
is.
what I'm saying.
Exactly
Let's just
right.
spell it out in the charter.
So I think that's a piece. I do think the public and whatever we call it is a separate conversation. We'll get to it. I think I can give more education and look through other, provide some examples, identify ways, to answer some of your questions. I think that's valid, and I think your pushback is valid. So I can give some more, I think, education, and identify more pieces on there. The thing that I will note is that in this charter for 2013 that you all did work in was an ethics board, and I think that's where, if we're just talking about the investigative powers, I'm just moving us on, is that I would like to call, one of the things we said to add to this was to refer to the appropriate board or commission. Mm-hmm. And so I would motion, because I felt like there was agreement on that, at least, and we can figure out what that looks like, because there is an ethics board worked into this charter anyway. I would like to motion that we add and refer to the appropriate board or commission for investigative powers, which we can come back to if we need to, but I'd like to motion for that.
Okay, so you read what you
Yeah, I
want to put
like, let me go back and look.
for the clerk, nice and slow.
Yeah, where do you think I should put it?
No,
Yeah.
just read the whole thing and
Okay.
then add it to where you want to go.
Well, that's where I was like, where should I add the?
I would say at the bottom. Where it
At
says
the bottom.
Where the council shall apply.
The appropriate court and or board or commission.
Appropriate court and or, yeah.
Board or commission. So at the end where it says the council shall apply the appropriate court, adding and or the appropriate board / commission.
No, Scott, you got to read the whole thing. That's what they
Okay,
made
all
us
right,
do
all
last
right,
week.
sorry. Again, I'm relearning because I wasn't here last week, so sorry. Okay, investigative powers, 3.117. The council may subpoena witnesses, I was like, I can't read, may subpoena witnesses, administer oaths, take testimony, and require the production of evidence in any matter pending before it, to enforce a subpoena or order for production of evidence, or to impose any penalty prescribed for failure to obey a subpoena or order. The council shall apply the appropriate court and or board or commission. At the very end.
Can I make an amendment to that?
Yeah, thank you.
To say
Sure.
that the council shall apply, and it should be to the appropriate court, or any other investigative powers to a board or commission. So,
Got it.
because right now it just reads that they can subpoena, administer oaths or testimonies, but we want to make sure that they can do anything that needs to be investigated. So that would be my friendly amendment. Shall apply to the appropriate court or investigative powers to any board or commission.
Should that go after order or not yet? You're right.
I appreciate you.
No,
Sheila.
Mr. just hold on one second, because I think you're saying, I think you guys are saying the same thing, but
No, I just added the phrase investigative powers. So, because right now, it only gives them the ability to do what's already in there to a board or commission versus saying any other investigative powers. So that way, there may be something additional.
To the appropriate court and,
Yeah.
and or appropriate board or commission.
Subpoena to order the county shall apply to-
We're gonna, that's what I'm saying, let us wordsmith it first before you start, because that helps. So to the appropriate court and or
investigative powers to any appropriate board or commission.
But you still need Commissioner Scott piece in there to
No, I'm saying
appropriate
that-
to board or commission.
Right.
Like you got to appropriate it and give them investigative powers.
Right.
So you
The
just
event-
can't give them
well-
investigative powers without appropriating it.
I think the investigative powers come in their section where it speaks about what the ethic, whatever the board is or whatever the body is. That's where they're we need to spell it in their section what the investigative powers are. So that's why I think that's what I'm hearing, right? Is
Yeah.
that in that section we'll outline, okay, here are their investigative powers that were appointed in the charter. So I think that just opens it up for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you still, the wording though, like you still, investigative powers, you still have to include
Yes.
and or appropriate board or commission to include investigative powers of those boards or commissions. Because you can't appropriate something. You can't give something power that's not already appropriated. So if you do it, either you wait to do it in the particular section, right? Or under investigative powers, I'm with you. I would add and or appropriated board or commission, adding investigative powers to those boards and commission because they don't have it already. You understand what I'm saying? They don't have and somebody could challenge the fact that they can stack a board like they have. They can stack a board, and if the charter doesn't say that board doesn't have investigative powers, then it's left back into whose appointment or control that board. So
Okay, so what would be the language?
so the language would be, the council may subpoena witnesses, administer oaths, take testimony, and require the production of evidence in any matter pending before it, to enforce a subpoena or order for production of evidence, or to impose any penalty prescribed for failure to obey a subpoena or order. The council shall apply to the appropriate court and or appropriate board or commission, empowering investigative powers to the appropriate board or commission.
All right, Scott, do you take that friendly amendment?
Sure.
Okay, it needs a second now, and then you're gonna.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I'm not going to say anything. It does sound a little redundant.
It's legal, and I need lawyers to be able to.
I was going to say, we do,
That's my-
hopefully
that's my
we'll have
bad.
some legal,
Yeah, it's legal.
yeah.
You do have to give them powers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, any other discussion? All right, roll call.
Williams,
Yes.
Garrett,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Payne, Stewart,
Yes.
Turpin.
Yes.
5 yeas. No nays.
Passes, all right. 3.118.
Let's take a breath. Let's take a collective breath.
We're cooking with grease right now. We got to keep going, Scott. All right, vacancies. Does anybody see?
I can send it to you, Sheila. I wrote it down.
Okay,
I wrote it down.
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, right. So because you didn't understand what you wrote, my Jewish doctorate should be very, as I finish, should be very, that's the very common sign. That's why we get to argue it in court.
It's true.
All right, vacancies. Is there any changes to 3.118 that we see? I think the only thing that I saw that needed to be changed is what if the vacancy is to the at-large position?
But wouldn't it, hold up, the vacancy on council may be filled by appointment.
Because they can be removed.
Well, to be honest, okay, I'm sorry. Sir Chair, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can I go? Oh, sorry. Thank you. I think it should be an appointment. Again, as it always has been, the person puts in the application, then the board appoints the at-large person.
Yeah, no. That's not my thing. What I'm saying
Okay.
is, if the vacancy is in the at-large seat,
Right.
it says registered electors of the district. It doesn't speak to at-large. What I'm saying to you is, for an at-large person, they can be from any district in the city.
So to be fit,
So we need to have language that encompasses not only district people or at-large.
So really just a quick update of like.
just say or at-large, yeah.
Right.
Oh, you just saying, oh, okay, all right. Okay, you Kermit, you're doing the Kermit thing, I
Do you
guess.
have a suggestion on language?
No, I don't, but y'all can come up with it. So,
I just asked it.
Yeah, so no, the suggestion on language is to say a vacancy on the council may be filled by appointment of the registered electors of the city or district affected by a majority of council members remaining.
Perfect. Of a registered elector of the city or district affected by a majority of council. So we're just adding city. Yep.
City
or district. Perfect. Was that a motion?
You got to make. I can't.
I make a motion to add the language that we discussed.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All right. Seeing none, roll call.
Garrett,
Yes.
Killian. Payne. Stewart,
Yes.
Turpin,
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
5 yeas, no nays.
3.119, effective absences. Any changes?
I just have a question. I guess just a point of clarity, Sir Chair. So it says shall operate to vacate the seat of a member. Is that like start the process? Is that what that language is saying? Basically? Oh, okay. I just wanted.
Yeah. I'll just note that obviously the language on here that's in bold was added from the 2013 charter, which already adds some additional teeth, I think, to that
yeah,
language.
okay.
Yeah, I like it.
Which I like. Yeah, I don't have any particular changes.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept item 3.119 as is?
Moved by Garrett.
Supported by Stewart.
All right, roll call. Oh, any discussion? Roll call.
Garrett,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Payne, Stewart,
Yes.
Turpin,
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
5 yeas, no nays. 3.199 as is.
What meeting is going on now?
District 5.
On Charter Commission Night?
All right. Section 3.120.
That's exactly why we have it. I'm sorry, my mic was on.
All right. 3.120, control of city payroll. Any changes to this section?
The thing that I think about in this one, sorry, and never follow anyone's order in terms of saying, but is that it says maybe just some language that identifies like as approved by the council in the annual budget process, like whatever that looks like. Maybe it's good to outline what was approved by council. It has to be in a budget item, like it has to be go through, any.
Well,
That's what, I don't know.
But if you say in the budget, Scott, then it limits it to when the budget was created. If they
Or
amend
subsequent
it to,
amendment, yeah.
if they amend it to pay them, I think it's clear. But Garrett, you got your hand up.
No, I was reading, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I think that's probably why you don't want to tie it to the budget.
I mean, I was anticipating any amendments in that process as well, but yeah.
Or you want to add that language to say any amendments. So I'm just.
If people think it's unclear, I don't know. It's kind of a crapshoot on my end.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think it's very clear because it only speaks to compensation to appointees and members of boards or commissions, volunteers or employees of the city except as approved by the council. So the assumption would be if this was no compensation, so was the assumption that extra pay overtime or because you sit on the charter commission, you get $200, like, because if that's the case, then who would know how much each board should be, if we did it at the budget time, you would have to know it to put it in the budget. But then who can a board itself vote to compensate itself and send that approval to the council? You know what I mean? Like, we sit here and discuss and say, hey, well, for doing this, we want $10,000 a piece. And then we vote, make a motion, and it goes, and then it has to go before council
Council's
anyway.
like, what the hell are we doing
And then
now?
council, right, council can either vote it up or vote it down.
And then they're like,
know.
maybe that's why I was like,
Okay.
maybe that's why I don't know. It's really, I could go either way. I really don't.
Yeah.
It's not a bone I really care about, but I just was like, I think it's just good to note that it was approved in the council budget and or subsequent amendments. I think just notes that it has to be a line item in the budget, and I think maybe I'm just thinking about that in terms of like positions that have been paid in the past that weren't on the budget, right? And like maybe that just clears up that. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. But I'm glad that the last charter people, Dr. Turpin included, added volunteers to this.
Sure.
So I think that language is helpful. But
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Stewart brought up a very good point. Well, we've had in the past, people get appointed, and they're supposed to come here for a confirmation vote. Mm-hmm. They don't get a confirmation vote. Mm-hmm. They're still being paid. Mm-hmm. And then it's switched over. Man, we've had some very unusual things in this city right here. Just as I'm sitting here thinking about it, like, and I understand now, trying to relate to, okay, 1982, when you say, and Commissioner Williams, me and Stewart would not be the bad guy through this whole thing, because you spent 12 years on this board, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Just want to publicly put that out there. If nothing in the charter, like, where will we put this? Like, even if we don't put it here, like, where can we put this where appointees just, you can't, again, because it has no teeth. Like, if they pay them anyway and council finds out about it, what you gonna do about it? It's just a nan, and you.
No, I get what you're saying. So I think that the flip side to that is, because it's clear, it says no compensation, right?
Yeah,
but so what is the B part of that clause? What's that language, Commissioner Garrett, is what I'm saying to you. So if somebody gets paid, because the council only approves budgets, right? If they run the check registry and somebody has been paid already, what is the penalty for the administration on paying these people? Because if somebody renders service to the city, they have to get paid. Even if, so you can't work for free. What I'm saying to you is Laura and everybody else is going to be on the city, and there'll be a lawsuit in order to get paid. So what is the ramifications if this section is not followed? I think this section is clear on not paying people unless it's approved by the council. The question is, what happens if they just do what they want to do, i.e., Mr. Saunders and vote and all this other stuff, paying without council approval. So, what is the penalty? Do you take it out of the mayor's check?
I know this may sound different. I know it may sound. Thank you for yielding for that. I honestly believe it should. It should not come up because the person wouldn't have. The person is not responsible for finding out how they get paid. They came, they offered their service, somebody signed a contract or whatever, they go through it, they're getting paid, they come to find out that they're not. The person that had to sign off on it is the mayor. So upon this being found out, or if the B clause is ratification or the refund of money spent without council approval will be taken out of the mayor's pay or their salary, or because that's the person who ultimately made the decision. And I wish we didn't have to have this conversation, because I know Dr. Turpin's sitting back there like, I can't believe this.
This is a conversation.
What's been going on while I was rendering smiles around here?
I don't know how you get to this space where there's no faith in our leaders to properly compensate someone who's doing work. I would assume that if they're doing the work, that they were contracted to do the work, and the contract would include them being paid. And wouldn't that have to be approved by the council or something?
Yes. Excuse me. Through the chair, through the chair to Commissioner Dr. Turpin. Yes, sir. And the last, before 3.5 years, 8 years, there's been found that an individual they said, I ain't taking it to council, I'm paying whoever I wanted to pay, and they don't need no approval. And this was in live meetings. I got them recorded.
Right here in our rules and regulations that we propose to submit.
Yes, sir.
It says the city, except as approved by council.
And
now the previous charter doesn't have that language in it?
The previous charter does have the language in there. But they said, I don't care nothing about the previous charter. Not in those verbatim words, but their actions basically said,
that wouldn't stand up in a court of law.
Yeah, but we didn't have any teeth to either go to court.
What did you do with your teeth?
Nah, he's passing.
You're the hard part, right?
You was around here passing out smiles. The charter didn't have any teeth, and nor did the council.
So you're saying that we need more teeth than this? As approved by the council.
We need is just we need something to say after. If it's not followed, then what? To your point, if it's not followed, what's the consequence? Because we have documented proof that this has been done over and over and over, at least 5 times I can think of.
Well, it sounds to me like that's an issue of ineptness of the council in terms of like.
Well, council made it quite.
If your rules and bylaws or whatever, you have the power to like. I don't understand why that wouldn't stand up in a court of law.
Well, it would if they had teeth. If they had something power to it.
What more teeth do you need?
Dr. Turpin.
Need gold teeth, platinum, or what?
If somebody pays a contractor $500 without city council approval, you're not going to spend $10,000 in lawyer fees to then tell the administration that they can't spend $500. That's not good use of taxpayer dollars, and you wouldn't have a council at all because they would be going to court every day because these people were doing things that were egregious. What I'm saying to you, Dr. Turpin, is the statement itself is perfectly fine. It does not have a problem. The question that Commissioner Garrett asked is if this section of the charter is violated, what then happens and what is the recourse?
It sounds awfully difficult to me because you're just saying that, all this work that we're doing in terms of like trying to provide governance for our elected officials to guide themselves in their actions is really neither here nor there. If they feel like they want to do something, they're just going to do it anyway.
That's what happened.
And so why are we here?
We're here because it didn't happen, and so now we have an opportunity to correct it, is what I'm saying to you, Dr. Turpin. So
it's already in writing here that the employees of the city accept as approved by the council. What are we going to do that's going to make it any different?
To that language, through the chair to Dr. Turpin, through the chair through Dr. Turpin, there is nothing that the language itself written is fine. We need a part B. Upon finding out that something was approved or paid for without council approval, the consequence of that action is the monetary amount found to be not approved is refunded through the mayor's salary. It protects the mayor from the mayor not about to give up nothing part of their salary. So if this is already in the charter and you go out and you appoint someone and you didn't get it approved through council, and then through their due diligence as the governance body finds out that during budget time you paid somebody $10,000 that you wasn't supposed to, now the charter says that money the person gets paid because they did the work, but the refund to the general budget comes from your salary, sir, or her.
That sounds fine.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so there is a threshold that needs to be established. Am I correct?
I would.
So in other words, the mayor has the right to appoint and approve salaries up to a certain point, beyond which this threshold, then if he is unilaterally doing something and the council decides they want to punish him for having done so, this thing becomes action. So is there a threshold? What kind of numbers are you talking about?
Well, I think this says no compensation, so I think it should just be the subsequent amount. So if you pay somebody to cut grass at City Hall that's not approved and not budgeted, and you gave them $75, that $75 needs to be paid out of that salary. Because that way, the goal is to prohibit this action from happening. It's not to actually get the $75.
Because what's been happening through the chair to Dr. Turpin, and what's been happening or has happened in the past is that the person gets paid for doing a service, if you can call it service, and they walk away with a $60,000 and the general fund takes that hit and that's it. And because you get to this part and there's no teeth, then the charter doesn't hold anybody accountable. So I know for a fact that if you have $120,000 salary, you're not sharing outside your household any of that. Because now the charter says that I didn't take this you're going to have to deal with the fact that the council didn't confirm whoever you want to confirm and go on and follow the charter as it relates to what happens if someone is not confirmed. It keeps you in that vein.
Well, it's right there written down that,
Yeah.
the council has to approve whatever you decide you want to do.
Yeah, and if you don't,
So you just want to emphasize the fact that the council has powers to punish you if you do so.
or appropriate it through charter,
A little addendum to this this statement here.
That's it, sir.
Precisely.
That's quite harmless.
I would think so myself.
Yes.
The wording?
Until your check starts coming out short.
I'm gonna need a bodyguard soon.
Yeah.
She said, I don't want to be here for all this.
So no compensation or salary shall be paid to the appointees, members of boards or commissions, volunteers, or employees of the city except as approved by the council. If it is determined that a violation has occurred,
Violation of this ordinance.
is this an ordinance?
Provision.
I mean, provision. Might not-
Right. If a violation has occurred of this provision, the financial amount,
Monetary.
the monetary amount given, see, would it be given? The monetary amount
Paid.
paid would
Be refunded.
be refunded from the mayor's salary.
By. Because if,
No. But from the mayor's salary, no less than 2 pay periods after the violation has been certified.
is there a second for that motion?
Do we get a motion?
That was the motion.
I know.
Second. Vice Stewart.
All right, any discussion? All right, seeing none.
We're taking this to legal counsel, right? Just making sure.
Roll call.
Definitely gonna have to do it.
Discussion, so obviously, being able to regain this monies from the mayor's salary, we're not talking about very large sums of money.
That depends on them. You got $120,000 to play with.
No, you're not gonna get it back in 2 pay periods.
I said no less than 2 pay periods.
Oh, no less than.
No
Okay.
less than.
Okay, all right. That's fine.
Garrett, oh, I'm sorry.
No, please.
Ready for the vote?
Yep.
Garrett,
Roll call.
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Turpin,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
5 yeas, no nays.
All right. All right, moving on to section 3.121, bonds. Is there any change to this section?
We've made very far progress. Commissioner.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept as is?
So moved.
Support by Garrett.
All right, any discussion on section 3.121?
The section of bonds. Some of the numbers are a little off, and depending on which version.
All right, seeing no discussion, roll call?
Killian,
Yes.
Payne. Yes. Stewart,
Yes.
Turpin,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Garrett.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
All right, we are
30
finished with
years
that
later.
chapter. Thank you. All right.
You got to celebrate the little wins here.
All right. So now we are at chapter 2 of the charter, the city clerk, section 3.201, functions and duties of the clerk. Do you want to read through that, Mr. Stewart? And we can take them at their clauses.
Yes, I'll also note that this was updated in the 2013 charter to reflect additional duties. All right, 3.201, functions and duties of the clerk. Number 1, the clerk shall be clerk of the council and shall attend all meetings of the council and keep a permanent journal of its proceedings in the English language. 2, the clerk shall provide and publish required public notices and ordinances in the manner provided by this charter and as may be required by law. 3, the clerk shall provide for the registration of electors residing in the city and the conduct of all elections in the city as required by law. 4, the clerk shall maintain a record of all existing and proposed rules, regulations, policies, and procedures of the city. 5, the clerk shall certify by signatures all ordinances and resolutions enacted or passed by the council and make them available to the public as provided by law. 6, the clerk shall administer oaths and take affidavits. 7, the clerk shall provide and maintain in their office a supply of forms for all petitions to be filed for any purpose by the provisions of this charter. 8, the clerk shall ensure reasonably accessible polling locations throughout the city for the purpose of conducting elections. 9, the clerk shall ensure safekeeping, retention, and public accessibility of documents in accordance with the law. And 10, the clerk shall exercise other powers and duties as provided by law, this charter, ordinance, or resolution.
I think you're reading from different.
That was, I pulled a bunch of stuff from the 2013 charter that was online too. So like some of that stuff,
This is the printed version. We don't have that, Scott.
that was what I had in my little notes here, so. Yeah, I don't know.
Yes,
I don't know why it's different.
All right. So, does anybody see anything missing in the clerk's responsibilities? Yes. Commissioner Payne?
I actually added words A, language, and slash Spanish. And added another one based on first of the year and annual expenses, like some kind of budget for this charter and for whatever is needed.
Okay, so let's take A first to add that language. Is there, well, Payne made the motion. Is there support to add Spanish to the end of that?
Support.
Okay.
Vice Stewart.
It's been supported by Stewart. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call. Yep, section A. So the
So
clerk.
you're just adding and Spanish?
Yep.
Commissioner Payne,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Turpin,
No.
Williams,
Yes.
Garrett,
Yes.
Killian.
Yes.
5 yeas, 1 nay.
Okay. And what was your second amendment?
Well, I think I kind of chopped it up a little bit, but what I was basically trying to say is that for the clerk to be responsible for preparing a budget for charter and for whatever, whether it's election expenses or a budget.
Okay.
He does do a budget.
I think
It's not in here, though.
There's another clause.
so. I think that we should probably have a whole section Commissioner Payne on charter revision, because one of the things I want to add is that the charter needs to be revisited at least once every 10 years. Because what we're doing now is 40 years overdue. And so even if they look at it and say that it's still good, then that would be fine. But I think every 10 years it should be looked at. Go ahead.
I would actually argue for maybe earlier. And I think one of the examples, I think it's the city of Southfield that does, and actually just has a provision that puts it on the ballot automatically every like 5 years. I don't know how many years it is, but at least puts it on the ballot automatically, essentially. So it is already like worked into a time frame of putting it on, and the citizens can vote on it or not.
Okay. So what would be your time recommendation? For
I
putting
think
it on the
5
ballot?
years.
5 years.
5 years, I think, is realistic. The one note that I have on that, and I don't know if this is necessarily in the clerk section or if this is somewhere else, but I'll just make the note and move on, yeah, so we don't get caught up, is perhaps one of the things that we could also look at is some sort of informal, not a formal charter commission, because that is governed by state law, but an informal charter review commission of some sort that, or board that can recommend changes to the council that they can then recommend to be put on a ballot. So like amendments. So instead of saying, okay, it's every 5 years we'll have a formal charter revision commission, or in this case, I'd be comfortable with 10 as well, right? But in the interim, we have an informal review board that is looking at it and saying, okay, there may be changes that we didn't get to. Let's have those conversations and let's at least recommend to move those to council to recommend for an amendment. So,
Yeah, I like that. So can we actually, I guess, not to get bogged down with this, because I don't think this has to do with the clerk, but can we agree that after we get through with this charter as constructed, we come up with a section on charter revision?
Yes.
Can we all agree to
Yep.
that? Okay. Okay. All right, good.
Motion.
What'd you say?
Motion.
Can we put that in the form of a motion so it's
Okay,
documented?
I need somebody to make the motion. I'm the chair.
I motion to, after reviewing the city clerk section, to have a formal discussion on a charter revision charter revision section added to the charter itself. God, I'm terrible at that.
Support by Garrett.
Okay.
All right, any discussion?
Did you get it, ma'am?
No, I didn't even get it in my head, so. Maybe I shouldn't volunteer for these damn motions anymore. Okay.
All right, roll call.
Stewart,
Yes.
Turpin, Williams,
Yes.
Garrett,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Payne.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
Cool.
Okay, 3.202. Ms. Sheila, do you have any changes to this section? But you got institutional knowledge. You said what? So does anybody else have any changes to this?
Can I just go back to 1.1, 1.01? I don't think we voted on that.
1 point,
You mean 3?
2 point, whatever, wherever we're at. The first one about the deputies, or about the regular clerk duties.
the what?
Yes, the regular clerk.
Yeah. Because I think, did we
No,
answer?
we didn't vote on that.
Yeah, and did we answer Payne's question?
We did. We said we're going to cover that, and
In the other, okay, so that one, but the budget side?
we're going to cover that in the charter on who's going to do, because the clerk may not be the
Cool.
best person to come up with the budget. We don't know.
Then the
I'm just
last thing I would just add is that I had clearly a section that for some reason wasn't on yours, and I do like it. So what I had was whatever goes after what, H-I-J-K? Is it? Yeah,
It'd be K.
so K, I wrote numbers in mine. And the clerk shall exercise other powers and duties as provided by law, this charter, ordinance, or resolution, which I think is a little bit of a catch-all.
Okay, so say that nice. and
Yeah, I know,
slow.
I wasn't.
Say that one more time.
So what it says, no, not yet. So what it says for the folks is, it would be K, and it would say, and the clerk shall exercise other duties and powers as provided by law, this charter, ordinance, or resolution. So I think that allows for a little bit of a catch-all because there are other duties that we may not define necessarily right now that I think about early voting. I don't know. I know that voting is and elections are part of this, but if there's other things that kind of need to be added as part of that, I think that catches it.
Okay, I think, is there a second for Stewart's motion?
Second by Garrett.
All right, any discussion? Payne?
Well, I just think that we should make this very clear, because if we say other, the job just never ends. So I think we need to be detailed in what we want to add in there.
I think that clarity comes from the law, this charter, ordinance, or resolution.
So,
And then we have to go to the law and find that.
so what Stewart, I believe, is saying is if it's not covered in A through J, then we don't have the ability for the clerk to currently do it. So he was trying to come up with a phrase because we as charter people don't know all the things that the clerk is doing now and will have to do in the future.
And we don't need to have a charter amendment. We don't want to have
Well,
to
we
have a charter
would know
amendment.
what we interviewed.
We don't interview the clerk.
No, well, I'm just saying, if we were to, just like we're supposed to be going to meetings and seeing what the mayor thinks, seeing what everyone thinks about certain jobs. I think that's what we were supposed to do, is what we said we were gonna do.
So I don't know, again, this was on the charter that I saw from 2013. So I don't know, again, I don't know why there's a distinction. So all I'm doing is trying to make it so that it's updated to the version that I saw, which was not with the track changes. It was like a formalized version that I think won out. So that's where I think the distinction is. So this was already in the 2013 charter, in the version that the finalized version that I think went out to voters. Now, of course, we've changed our website since I last looked that up. So I'm like, dang, I can't even find. But all I'm trying to do is get that to be matching based on what. And again, the way that you define what those duties are by the law, the charter, a resolution, or an ordinance. So, like marijuana, for example, is not laid out here, right?
But
Marijuana.
the law
Does, exactly.
was written.
Or a
So,
resolution.
but I think I hear your point, Commissioner Payne. I think this is the list that we need to take out to the community.
Yeah.
And then if they have something, then you can always come back and say, we should amend the clerk
Yeah.
go. We can reopen any piece of this charter to say, I heard residents say that the charter should require them to do birth certificates instead of the county doing it, right? And that's what the people are saying. And then you could come back and we can make a motion on doing that. But this is just regular responsibilities and duties that we think the clerk should have.
Okay.
Siri. Look at me.
Okay, all right, so there's been a move in support, there's been discussion, roll call. Can you read the amendment again, Stewart? So-
Yes, absolutely. I will send it to you, and I'll read it again just for the sake of the order. And the clerk shall exercise, it's K, and the clerk shall exercise other powers and duties as provided by law, this charter, ordinance, or resolution. And I will send it to you for the sake of the order. Yep.
All right, section 3.202.
We need to
Oh.
We
vote.
second?
Oh, a roll call, I'm sorry. It's already been moved and seconded, and we had discussion. I just wanted him to reread it
was
so the clerk can, yep, that was where you added your thoughts, yep. Roll call.
Stewart,
Yes.
Turpin. Williams,
Yes.
Garrett. Killian,
Yes.
Payne.
Yes.
6 yeas, no.
Okay, section 3.202, Any changes to the chief assistant clerk?
Let's change all her jobs. No, I'm kidding.
Listen, when I was here, we voted for everybody to have a raise, but I'm not here. No, I've been gone now. All right.
A raise for dealing with us.
All right. Any other changes? All right. Is there a motion to accept as is?
So moved.
All right, I'll take the support from Killian. All right, any discussion? Seeing none, roll call?
Turpin,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Garrett,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Payne,
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
Okay.
Before we move on to, can I make it?
Yeah, go ahead.
This wouldn't be in the, but I know I mentioned this, was I know there's a section, the one section that outlines just that city council can have staff. Again, this is open for interpretation. I think it might be good to note that there should be like a department of the city council or department of the legislative branch as a separate chapter, right? So we've talked about some positions, parliamentarian, some of those pieces. I think it would be beneficial maybe to have chapter 3 in this for the legislative branch that outlines like the department of the city council.
I agree, because we need, so they struck the language of auditor in their charter because the emergency manager got rid of that position. So the council previously, just for historical sake, so that role was different depending on the administration. So years ago, it was a finance guy, Wayne Bellback, and then other times there were legal people. And then when we brought on Attorney Sharp, she was the legislative auditor because the city council didn't have any legal help. So that position had been used in various positions. So I think that what Stewart is saying is coming up with a department of the city council would be good. I think for next meeting, we need to flush out what that looks like. And then we can get to the executive branch.
Great.
I think I want to stop right there because I don't want to dive into the duties of the mayor without the chair being here and making sure that she's giving input on what's going on, because I think this will be a big chunk of what we end up taking to the citizens as far as the charter.
Agreed. Can we make a motion on the, and vote on the, okay. Then I motion formally to add a chapter 3 to this section that outlines the department of the city council.
Is there support?
Support.
All right, I'll take support by Killian. Any discussion?
I'll just note that I will take it as my responsibility to add at least something on here so that y'all have something to respond to in the next meeting.
All right.
For Department of City Council. Yep. Thank you for fixing my motions. I owe you a coffee or something. I owe you a tea? A drink, okay? I was like, okay, dang it. Go there.
All right, any discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call?
Williams,
Yes.
Garrett,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Payne,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Turpin. 6 yeas, no nays.
Okay. All right, thank you. Which brings us to closing comments.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's 8:20, so I'm gonna be there forever. On number 1, we're gonna be there for 20 minutes.
Great meeting. I appreciate the healthy discussions, and I look forward to the next meeting as I review this meeting this week again.
Stewart?
Thanks. Yes, I also agree. I thank you for the healthy discussion and the passion, I think, across everyone in the room on getting this right and why they're here. So, yeah, thank you. It's been a minute since I've been here, but I am very appreciative to be here. So,
Killian?
First and foremost, honors to Miss Evelyn LaDuff for giving me the patience and open-minded opportunities that I need to assist our Charter Commission and the people with it. Ms. Sheila, thank you too for being so patient. You're just great. Honors to everyone listening and viewing this. Just want to thank everybody for doing their great work here. Peace.
Dr. Turpin?
Glad to be here. Glad to be here with you. Thank you.
Commissioner Payne?
Good evening. Just wanted to thank those that are here this evening. It's good to see Commissioner Turpin back and Commissioner Scott back with us. Glad to have you. And I'm hoping that we will keep Commissioner Burrow in our prayers.
I will adjourn this meeting at 8:24.